Hello and welcome to the Annals of Our Lore, a BXG production. I am your host, Greg Filson, and alongside me is my esteemed co-host, Brenton Bestwick. Brenton, how are your annals tonight, sir?
I shit myself a little bit today. So I sharded a little bit.
Oh no. I haven't. It's been a while since I've done that.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be one of these people that says they haven't done it since they were a baby. I mean, it happens. I went to Mexico and
Sure.
accidentally got some things in me that didn't agree, and it happens. So I'm sorry
Yeah.
to hear that, Brendan.
Well, I told friend of the program, future guest of this program, I'm sure David Slagle, David asked of Garden City, and he said over under 1.5 on how many times you shart in a year. And I said, oh, way over.
Oh no, I'm way under. That is interesting. Well, before we dive into this show, the Annals of Our Lore, just a little housekeeping. Make sure to follow us. All the BXG production stuff on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter at BXG Productions, including the Nexus, our other program, and Vertical Slice, the gaming program. Make sure you check that out. I am GT Phils on Instagram, GT Filson on Twitter. Brenton is Alpha Donut Guy on both of those. Okay, make sure to check out all the YouTube videos. Catch up on that. We'll have some more posting soon. It's a busy time of the year, especially for myself with the end of the school year. So just trying to get caught up on all that. But I will soon be off, and Janie does all the wedding things at this point, because she's more talented at those things than I am. So if you're listening and you're going to the wedding, all the work will be done by her. All the dancing and drunkenness will be done by me. So let's bring in a friend of the program, a longtime friend of mine. We have known each other so long. Matt, it's been 20 years. Matt Adams, thank you for joining us. And I just want to point out, this is not the first time that we've got together on a Tuesday and it turned into a Wednesday. Many Tuesdays turned into Wednesdays at the old newspaper. Matt and I have been friends for almost 20 years. It's crazy to think like that. Matt Adams, thank you for joining the program tonight. How are your annals?
They're good. I have not come close of over 1.5 in sharding myself at any time. There have been close calls, but I never had that happen. But there have been moments where things got really close. So yeah, thank you. I did not realize, Greg, that we timed this on a Tuesday night, which is where we spent most of our time. You knew you were going to end up in media or some kind of field where you don't make a lot of money when you spent your Tuesday night in a newsroom, a college newsroom, trying to get out the paper because it was so important the next day. Like, were we at a party? Were we hanging out with cool people? No, we were hanging out in a college newsroom where I realized later in my life I have met younger, meeting college students who are interns, and they would tell me that they got paid at their school paper. And I'm like, I wasn't even paid to be there, because they're like, oh, well, that makes sense. You were paid to be there. And I'm like, no, nobody was paying us except for free pizza. That's all I got for doing that. So, and it wasn't even good pizza.
No, it was bad pizza. I'm not sure what I would rate it now for the pizza review. It's probably not even there anymore. Who knows? But I haven't been in that area for a long time. Yeah, so just a quick story before we move on. And Matt, I'm sure you remember this, but I do remember, speaking of not getting paid, but still working our asses off. I thought of this story today when I was doing the write-up and thinking about the show. Do you recall when the complete system shut down as we were saving everything onto the disk, and we had to do the entire paper, and we're there until 3:30 in the morning? And you and I made a phone call to our director, said we quit because we didn't have this, and it was a whole thing. We didn't quit. We busted out a newspaper. It was 3:30 in the morning, and I remember that because the next day I had a morning class at 8. And yeah, so I don't know if you have any recollection of that, Matt. I hope you don't. I hope you have phased that out of your memory. I haven't, but any thoughts on that particular night? Because one of the worst journalism nights of my life.
Oh no, I have all the memories of all our time on our school paper. I haven't shut any of this out. It was good
Same.
stories when I made my return to Point Park as an adjunct teacher.
Oh
I had to
yeah,
tell all these
right.
stories again, so it was good to remember them. And I do remember the whole paper crashing and us being like, "No, we have to get this out for the people who aren't going to read this next." Just
That
we're going to throw this
that was
paper
the
away
key.
the next day. Our student body that did not care, but we're like, we got to get this out. And staying up to almost 4 a.m. that to do that. And then not to take over the pod with stories about our college days, but I also remember when they used to do the boat ride every fall when you came back.
Oh yes.
The Point Park, they had this boat ride that nobody wanted to go to because it was supposed to be dry, and you're like, I'm not going to go to this. I'd rather go to a party. I'd rather go hang out and do something. And I remember having a freshman photographer I sent to it because I'm like, I don't want to go to it. And I was the photo editor. I'm like, I'm going to send this random kid to it. And I remember he went to it. I remember I was at my apartment hanging out with friends, and I remember getting a phone call from them in which he said he's like, I have this photo and you have to see this. And I'm like, what photo could you possibly have from this dumb event? And it was when one of the star volleyball players got drunk, tried to get on the boat, was stopped by a cop, and then she punched the cop. And he got a photo of her being arrested and put in the back of a police car. And that also caused Greg and I and the rest of the senior editors to get in trouble with the athletic department because we tried to run that story on the front page. So we were rebels, man. We were just causing all these problems at our school, calling our director at 4 a.m. to quit, having the athletic department angry at us. We were always causing an issue.
You know what? I don't miss those moments, but I will say we were journalists, man.
Yeah,
it ain't like
that's true.
It ain't like that now, man. Like we took that job so seriously. We had so many people hate us, all for a very minuscule paper, a very small moment of time in life, but very fun. I mean, I had some of the best times I ever had, some of the worst times I ever had. But at least for the most part, you and I were miserable together.
That's the truth. I was miserable around friends. Like my best friends in college were at the school paper, so I always had somebody to be miserable with at the moment.
Misery loves company. So that was good. I wanted to rehash a couple stories because when I thought about the fact that we literally have almost been friends for 20 years, that was crazy. Yeah. So the premise of the show is pretty straightforward. We brought in our special guest, Matt, and we each have a topic. And essentially what we do, the topics don't have to have any through line. They don't have to mean anything to one another, essentially. It's just we talk that topic. And this week, Matt, I like your topic. It was very on point for what's happening right now in the world, but it can also just go on in general through the annals of time. Matt, what is your topic for us tonight?
Yeah, so when I found out what the topics were going to be for the show, I was trying to find something that could relate. And I feel like this kind of relates to internet research, conspiracy theories. It kind of matches in a way because people love to overthink things. But I wanted to talk about with the ending of Succession recently, the ending of Barry, possibly the end of Ted Lasso coming up. And we're just in a moment of TV flipping over. We're going to have new shows taking over at some point. I really wanted to talk about series finales and best series finales and what makes a good series finale. And because when the series finale for Succession was coming up in my old newsroom, everyone, like when we had a meeting about we were going to do a story about like how to cover this, everyone started pitching what they thought was the best series finale, which is tough because then you start to rank how seasons line up. And does the show hold up as a full, does it stick the landing? Does it match up the rest of the show? Does there need to be a twist? Does it need to go out there and really make you think? Are there chances that they don't make the landing happen, but it's still a good show? Because everybody in the room started to throw out Sopranos. They started to throw out MASH. People talked about Breaking Bad. The Wire was out there. But some of those shows I also feel like had seasons where they weren't not the best work. And it really kind of struggled to get to that series finale. And I feel like, this was also something that you would do deep dives on the internet about, you want to read about. And once it ends, you want to research as much as possible about what's going on. So with the Succession finale and Barry finale happening, I thought both of them were interesting because they both went in two different directions. And Barry's last season has been so, if you watch the show, hopefully not spoiling too much, it's been so off the rails and way different from where it started in season one. Season one was like this dark, fun comedy. And then it just got way too deep later and just way off the rails at that point. And then Succession, I feel like followed a format that just made sense. Like there were no twists with this ending. There was nothing that I thought was too out of the ordinary. I guess a twist a little bit about spoilers here that the Roy kids don't win. And I feel like we were already kind of heading there, and I feel like we all kind of knew that. But I still thought it just ended in kind of the best way, in which it followed a format. It didn't surprise you. It was just good acting and good writing all the way to the end. And so when it ended, I'm like, this is a good series finale, and it probably one of the better ones that I can remember in the last couple of years. That I thought was a very, very good season finale that really stood out to me.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you. I just got done talking to Janie about the series finale. We talked quite a bit about how Succession just kind of fell in that line of essentially it's really good and it just kind of followed its own script of things. And so I definitely agree. Now, Brenton did not watch Succession.
Correct.
But Brenton's you've watched all The Wire, right, Brenton?
Yep. Yeah.
And Breaking Bad and things like that. So
yeah.
I don't know if we want to jump into what our favorite series finales are, or just like what you think makes a good series finale. I think is probably our best part to start.
I don't know, because I think most series finales suck, and I'm not trying to be pedantic, but like the Sopranos season finale is not, or series finale, sorry, is not good. Like the ending, I'm not going to spoil it. I know it's a very old show at this point, but the ending is just like, what? And it leaves a lot to the imagination. Whatever. The Wire's series finale was pretty weak. I think that had a little bit to do with the writer's strike, if I'm not mistaken. Game of Thrones, obviously, we can talk about how garbage the last several seasons of that was. Breaking Bad, I think, was an apt finale. Honestly, and this is, the like the nerd weeb adjacent kind of person that I am, I think the best series finales like that. When I saw that this was going to be a topic, I started to rack my brain, and I'm like, well, that's not any good. That's not any good. That's not any good. Like the whole way through. And I came to the conclusion that the best series finale that I can think of is actually the anime Cowboy Bebop. And it ends appropriately. And I think that is just the thing. I think that a lot of people go into series finales, as you said, Matt, like maybe looking for a twist. And I think oftentimes the best thing to do is to just color by numbers. I think that a lot of times people overthink these things, and they feel like, oh, we have to change up, this or that, or, and that's kind of why I kind of like shows where you kind of know the end. It's like,
sure.
One of our favorite series on the podcast the last few years was Andor. We know how that's going to end. We know where that's headed. And I think that it's a matter of not overthinking the ending, because a lot of times it is a show, whether it be a season or a full series, is not about the destination. It's about the journey. And I think that that's something that a lot of these shows miss, is that you've invested all this time into all these characters so that the little kid that can't walk anymore is the king at the end. No, I'm sorry. Spoilers, Game of Thrones. Sorry.
I think I think all of that is true. And I think, I was thinking back to, I love The Wire, but I think season 4 of The Wire is some of the best television ever written. But then season 5 was just so, and coming back to Greg and I working in a newsroom, that's not how that's not how any of that works. Like they really swung and missed on so much in that.
Season 2 is bad too.
So I did, and I also thought about this a lot to have this topic, because when the pandemic started, I did a lot of rewatches, because you were like, what am I going to do? So I rewatched The Wire, Sopranos. I rewatched Friday Night Lights. I was rewatching all these shows just to see what was standing out to me. 6 Feet Under, which 6 Feet Under I think has a good finale to it. I think that did a pretty good job of, but I thought it kind of paint by numbers, like you said. I think they stuck to that. There wasn't any too big twist or anything like that at the end. But Friday Night Lights and like The Wire are two shows, what we're facing now, a writer's strike, they both were hurt by that. And Friday Night Lights had that bad season 2. Landry murders a guy. We all have to forget about it. Season 3 comes back and they're just like, None of that happened. They're like, don't worry about it. His dad's a cop who covered up a murder with him. It's all okay.
Oh
They never
God,
talk
that
about
did
it.
happen.
Yeah.
I actually got out of the show because of that, and I need to rewatch the rest of it. But like that actually like messed with me. Where like
When I
it's so
rewatched
not
Friday
right.
Night Lights, I was shocked at how many things happened in the first season.
Yeah.
I was like, I thought this happened in the second season. It's like the fourth episode of the first season.
Season 1 is always also like 18 episodes deep.
It's
like
much longer.
I feel like they originally planned to have this very long syndicated television show, but then the other seasons get to like 12, 13 episodes and that's it. But yeah, I thought Breaking Bad had a good ending that painted by numbers. It followed. It was just there wasn't a huge twist. We were all wondering. The Sopranos one, when I rewatched it, I thought about it, and not to spoil it, I think the only thing it had going for it was there's a moment where everybody who's watching it at that moment, I was watching it with some friends back in my hometown. We all thought our cable went out, and that was the only thing that on the internet people freaked out about, and that was the only thing I thought was funny about it was researching, why did they plan that or why did they do that? Other than that, I feel like everything else in that season was pretty forgettable, and it wasn't as it gets remembered as one of the best TV shows, especially with the anniversaries, all the deep dives people are writing about recently with that show. It has some good moments, but even its season finale was not up to par with like amazing ending for the show.
They came back for another season, right? Like that wasn't the end originally.
That was the end.
Misremembering it?
And then they come back with the Saints of Newark, like they do the prequel.
The
but
prequel.
they don't. Yeah, but they don't do anything.
I thought that the last season was one of those deals of like, well, we didn't do this right, so now we have to come back and redo it or something like that. But maybe
they
I'm
probably should have. But
yeah, Game of Thrones too. If they want another swing at that,
cool,
I mean, I guess House of Dragons is their next try, but they could always go back and rethink Game of Thrones as well.
Maybe if George ever finishes writing those goddamn books.
Yeah, that was another problem too. You're waiting on a writer who's like, "Oh man, I got big checks now. I don't gotta work anymore." Like you got to make that guy work for it. And when they got to that point, he was like, "Why would I have to write any of this?"
The turnaround on his books are like ridiculous because he wrote the first several. They weren't like boom, 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 but there was a reasonable amount of time between them. And I think he's been working on this one for like a decade. But that's neither here nor there.
Well, I mean, it goes into that. You guys hit a lot of the notes. I like the idea of paint by numbers. Two of my favorite, one's not a surprise. I know neither of these should be surprises. Like, I love the Seinfeld series finale because it's one of those things, and I compared it to Succession, these are bad people. The Seinfeld characters are bad people. The Succession characters are bad people. And at the end, they kind of get what's coming to them. And I know that people were like, oh, I wanted Jerry and Elaine to get together. It's like, that's not what Seinfeld's about. That's so weird. They deserve to be punished for being absolutely terrible people. And it was such a stupid thing for them to get punished about because that's also Seinfeld. And then the very end with the button joke is one of the first jokes made in the show. And so there's that callback to that. And it was also, we also have nothing left. Like, we don't have any more jokes to write, even though we know they do because Larry David continues on with his show, even though he stopped writing in season 7. And then Mad Men is the other show for me that I really like the series finale. I saw it, like, I'm looking at the Ringer list. It ends up being like number 3. I don't really care about that on like the best series finales of the 21st century. I just thought that was really fitting too, the way Don Draper, went out writing the Coca-Cola ad. So for me, I like that idea of paint by numbers. I also like the idea of don't overthink anything. There's a reason why people watch this show to begin with, and you're not going to catch anybody new on this series finale. You don't need to. It doesn't have to be the best episode of that series. That's okay. Just go with what got you there and then figure out your way to wrap it up. I know that's tough. There's a lot of books that I've read where, boy, the book was 98% great. And then you get to the end and you're like, what the hell happened? Like, that was just a bad ending because they just don't know how to wrap it up. So for me, it's that paint by numbers, and don't try to be smarter than you were, because if you're popular enough to last this long and people care, they want what they want from it.
Yeah, what was their number one? What was Ringer's number one? What did they have?
Number 1, I think, is Sopranos. Actually,
Sopranos.
I have it.
Yeah, it's number. It's number 1, and then
Yep.
Friday Night Lights is number 2. Sopranos 3.
Okay. Yeah.
Mad Men 3. Sopranos number
Or
1.
Mad Men 3, Breaking Bad
Yeah.
4, and the Book of
Book of
Nora, The Leftovers 5.
Leftovers.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, I agree. The Succession finale is people getting what they deserve, but also they walk away. Everyone's still rich. Nobody really lost in the end. Like that was something else I thought about.
Right,
Once that ended, I thought about this for a while as I was like, this show is about a battle for power. But then when none of them get this power, they just sat back and it was like, you can't feel bad for anyone because you're like, well, they all made money off of this whole deal that happened. So they all like, yes, like some of them, like the character of Logan is like, our character Kendall is like, this is my identity. So he's like, I'm really bummed at how all this all worked out, but he still walks away with a lot of money. But they all get what is coming to them in the end, which is that, as their father said, they're not serious people, and it's never going to work for them. It didn't in this end. So I just thought that ended, and I went, that's what I wanted. It didn't have to twist. Didn't have to surprise me. It didn't have to pull out something random. Like, yes, if Greg would have became the leader of all things, that would have been hilarious. But that did not happen, and they did not fall off of a weird twist or anything. So I was okay with how all that worked out. And then I mentioned the Barry one, which just recently happened as well. And that was something I'm thinking more and more. I might rank that high if I redo a list eventually, just because I loved how much risk they took too. And sometimes you can take a risk and it works out. And I feel like that was a show that Bill Hader was really trying to take a lot of risk with their camera work and visuals and what they were thinking about on that side. And I thought that was great. And I think just the way they wrote themselves out of that series finale, I thought was well done. And I think it could be a top one for the future.
I totally agree on that. It was, like you said, it was a risk, and it was also like a thing that could have went really poorly with that risk, but they did it. They knew what they were doing to get away from it and to step away from something that's really good, whether it's Barry or Succession or any of these shows that we've talked about. Has to be tough on writers, but it is also part of like the gig. And eventually everything ends except for Simpsons and South Park. And so that's the thing. And so and for me, as we slowly progress to our next topic, Brenton, any final thoughts on series finales?
I just I scrolled that list from the Ringer real quick and I realized that I don't finish anything. I think of the 40 things on that.
That's what she said.
That's what she said.
I don't like, I'm looking through all the lists. I'm looking through the list and I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, I finished The Sopranos. I finished Breaking Bad. I finished like the top 5. Friday Night Lights. Outside of that, the number 41 was Deadwood. That was weird to me because the show got canceled after the 3rd season.
That's true.
And it's not a good ending because it just ends. It's like barely even a season finale, let alone a series finale. And so, they made that movie or whatever to kind of cap everything off. But I don't finish a lot of TV. I think it goes back to I just don't watch a lot of TV. I watch the things that excite me. But even some of those things I fall off on. Like, I freaking love the first 2 or 3 seasons of Homeland. And then after that, I was just like, whatever.
Sure.
That's a whole topic on it. Shows you abandoned. And Homeland, I also abandoned. I gave up on Homeland. I was like, nah, and I just rolled out of it.
I can't remember if it was the 3rd season. The first 2 at least are very good. And then it's just kind of like, we'll see. The only things that I can say for sure right now that I'm like firmly on board with: House of the Dragon, The Last of Us, obviously, and The Boys. Outside of those 3, you have your Disney stuff, and like that's a whole the Disney Marvel Star Wars stuff is like a whole different thing, because those are like your classic limited. You know what I mean? And I think that that's kind of the lane that right now I find myself in liking a little bit more is the limited thing, because it's like, okay, we're going to give you 6 to 10 episodes of something, and it's either going to be really cool or you can check out like after the first episode. But a lot of the stuff that we reviewed last year, Winning Time, Under the Banner of Heaven, We Own This City, all the Star Wars stuff, I just kind of maybe like that format a little bit, because with a lot of these shows, it's a case of, and I haven't watched the session, but I really like that they ended it after 4 seasons, because the whole idea of just like not overstaying your welcome. And I think that some of these shows, like Game of Thrones, okay, you're working off the books, whatever, it's going to be longer, but some of these shows that are, I mean, hell, Grey's Anatomy's been on since the birth of Christ at this point. And it just, you know, here we are for the 776th season. And I just think that some shows need to pause and say, okay, do we really need to explore some other random story arc, or is this good? Is it time? And I think more often than not, I think that's why The Wire's 5 seasons, Breaking Bad's 5 seasons, Better Call Saul's 5 seasons.
5. It was split in 2, but it's 5 seasons. Parts. Yeah.
I think that especially for dramatic shows, I mean, Greg and I talk a lot about Seinfeld and it's 9 seasons, but I think for dramatic shows, it's like 4 or 5 seasons, I think is good. I think you're good after that.
That shows you how far we've come, because talking about like 2005 to 2008, back then, if you had a show and it ended at 4 seasons, people were like, you're a failure. They were like, you have to have 8 seasons. That's a TV show. And now we're like, no, please, 3 to 4, and that's it.
Right. Well, the other thing too, you have to consider is a lot of those seasons were 22, 24 episodes long.
Yeah.
And now we're getting these sort of very curated, bite-sized, you know, how many episodes can we do to keep their subscription going for 1 month longer? Probably the magic number is like 8 or 9 sort of thing. It's all about the subscriptions.
I think for me, just and I like your note there, Brett, about like don't finish shows. Like we have shows that we really like, and you get like partly through like the 3rd season of something, and we like it, and then we're just like, I don't want it to end. And if I don't finish it, it won't end too. Like there's also that idea. Like this summer, we have a couple shows where I'm like, all right, we're going to try to watch the whole thing through. And Sopranos is one of them. And maybe another show, I'm not sure quite yet, but it's like, there'll probably be a point when we're watching that where it's like, oh, I don't want that to end. And that's like a really hard spot where you're just, I like this, but I also don't want it to end too. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if we actually finish the Sopranos throughout the summer. Matt, any final thoughts before we decide to move on?
No, I'm glad that Brennan brought up. I'm glad he brought up Better Call Saul. I would also throw out one that was a great ending, a great show. That I my hot take is I feel like it's rises above Breaking Bad. I feel like I might rank it a little bit higher. I feel like I really love that show, and I felt like they really nailed the landing on that one too. But Bob Odenkirk in those last 3 episodes is incredible, and I feel like it's also he put that whole show on his shoulders, and I think really carried it through the end as well. It was always good, but I felt like it also was a show that really relied on one character to carry us all the way through the series finale, which can happen as well. There could be a standout MVP, and it was him, and I think like that was something that really stood out to me as well. So I'm glad we brought that up, so that's another one I'd rank up there pretty high.
Great. Well, one of my favorite things to do when we're leading into like a series finale is to read all the predictions, the conspiracies behind these shows. And this leads me, Brenton, to your topic. Brenton, what is your topic for this week's program? What is that booing about?
Terrible segue.
What are you talking about? That's exactly what people do. The whole internet is just filled with conspiracies and what they think will happen.
So conspiracy theories. We had a very heavy talk. We had a very heavy episode last week, and I was thinking when I was trying to prepare an episode or a topic for this episode, how do we add a little bit of levity? And so I went with levity was still something that is like topical and you can kind of get into a little bit. So conspiracy theories, what are some of your favorites? And before I kind of kick it over to you guys, I just want to give, when I was researching this topic a little bit, I just want to give a shout out to my favorite conspiracy theories that are just totally batshit insane. Number 1, birds are not real. That is a real conspiracy theory found on the internet. You can Google that. Obviously flat earth, that's a fun one that's been kicking around for the last several thousand years. COVID vaccines and the government tracker chips. because clearly the government would need to inject chips into our body, even though we carry a tracker in our phone, in our pocket every day. And then that 5G was causing COVID. Those are my favorite. Like,
those are all good.
Like, just nasty. I can't believe that anybody actually believes this sort of thing. But I want to kick it over to you two. I have prepared 2 specific ones, but I will save mine for after you go.
Matt, as our guest, do you have any conspiracy theories you're fond of and like to kick her out?
Yeah, I think I'm going to start with Princess Diana's death, which they were like this. I'm going real 90s on this one, but I just thinking about this
only way
recently with the royal family always being in the news. This was something else where they found out that they were thinking that but it was also believed like that just like the kids making up this chase recently, that this chase did not happen, that she somehow like survived this and it was just a way to go undercover, that she was never found again. Like the idea that people will be like, oh, they're still alive and they're somewhere out there, and I'm like, but we would know that somehow someone would come out to the public, especially at some point. And this also goes into, I'm going very 90s here, but the one that Tupac is still out there as well. And he just was like, I'm tired of fame and I'm going to hide for a really long time. Always interests me because I'm like, these people had millions and he was on a record label and was touring the world. Why would he want to quit all of this to hide forever? And they're like, well, you'll just never hear from him again. Those always really fascinate me.
The Diana one, it was one I'm glad you brought up because I love that one. One of my favorites is I love the moon landing. Now, I don't like to spoil this, but this is one I like to just bring up and pretend like I 100% believe in that we didn't do it. I'll argue this hard. Like when you're bored at a bookstore, like I have been many times in my life, I'll hear somebody talk about it. It could be a customer, one of my coworkers when I was there. And I'm like, yeah, that didn't happen, right? And I'll fully own it. I will 100% be like, well, and I'll bring up stuff on my phone. I have done this. I'll do all kinds of things. I'll print out an article if I have to and just be like, see what they're saying. It's one of my favorite things is to completely troll people on it because then they think I'm a crazy person, which is okay with me. So the moon landing is one of my favorites. And the chemtrails from airplanes.
Oh, yeah.
Truly one of the best. Truly one of the best. I brought that up one time, too. I was outside. The bookstore is just one of those great ones. And I'd look up and one of the people that I was like a customer of ours that I didn't really like, she's like, oh, look at the chemtrails. Aren't they pretty? And I'm like, those are filled with like mind-altering chemicals. And I just walked away. I said it and I walked away. And that's just, I love conspiracy theories. I mean, there's like really good ones too. JFK Jr., the JFK being assassinated. All these ones are great. I mean, I think it's those underneath ones, even though the moon landing is an underneath one, but those underneath ones like the chemtrails or the 5G or the microchips in us, I love them. They're so good.
Those are so stupid. I think that's what makes them fun. It's like what Benoit Blanc said in Glass Onion. No, it's just stupid.
Yeah.
It's just dumb. It's just dumb. Greg, I'm surprised you didn't go for this one. Paul McCartney. The conspiracy about Paul McCartney.
I do like that one. The thing I will say is I remember it being very hot for a long period of time, probably like the 90s. And it seemed like it really faded off.
So the Paul McCartney thing, maybe because Paul McCartney's still making music.
It's like he's very much alive, and it's hard to deny that. The other one too, just Avril Lavigne being dead. People said she was dead, and this is like a person that looks just like her.
Oh, I haven't.
That's another one. That's a great one.
The Paul McCartney one goes deep because the alleged, this is a conspiracy, Paul McCartney, that he and the rest of the Beatles got into an argument during a recording session. He left the session, was promptly in a car wreck and decapitated. And they replaced him with a look and sound alike that could also, play the bass in a masterful way, apparently. But this goes deep because of the whole, excuse me, Abbey Road cover where he like isn't wearing socks or something like that, or like
Yeah.
his barefoot
Yeah, he's
across
barefoot,
the
yeah.
and that's supposed to symbolize his death and all this. Greg, I figured that'd be the one that you would go straight to because you're a Beatles guy.
I thought about it. It's not as silly as the other ones. That one's
How's
just been
that
around.
not silly?
That one, I think the problem is like there are people out there like that really don't believe he's alive. Like, and you can't even
There's this
joke
thing
around about it.
A lot of these people actually believe this shit.
That's like and a lot of people believe all these things we brought up, but like, I mean, I've made this joke before to people about Paul McCartney being dead, and they're like they'd rather just tell you like that their pet died than stuff like that. And I'm a Beatles fan, but it's like their older generation is just like they will lose their mind saying things like that. And I actually had to gear off of that joke. I had to take it down. I had to go back to the moon landing wasn't real because it was rough. I mean, I love conspiracy theories. I love the people that believe them because it's amazing. I'll watch any video about it. I'd rather watch a conspiracy theory documentary than an actual documentary on something that really happened. I could just be lost. Just give me all the conspiracy theories all day.
This just reminds me, you never wanted to be trapped at the party with the guy who was like, "Did you see Loose Change, man?" And you're like, "I got to get out of this combo." And if he cornered you, you were done. And then you were like, "All right, I guess I got to watch Loose Change at some point." And they're like, "Have you seen this?" And I'm like, it always fascinates me how these start, how a conspiracy theory starts. But then people who read, you're just reading it online, and you're like, "This is my source." Is I just read this on a forum.
Yeah,
someone one random ran into me and told me about this, and then they run with it forever. And they're like, "It's Pizzagate." It's like, "Oh no, I heard this," and it's like, "No, none of this is real." It's like, no, I read this in this one place on the internet. It has to be true.
I tell you what, and this is scary. I was watching something. This is eventually going to be a topic for me, but artificial intelligence is getting so good with video, audio, and the written word that I'm scared for the next election cycle because
sure.
And especially because you have one guy who can't remember where he is half the time. And then the other guy who will say whatever at any given moment, that if these AI things come out and say, "Did you see what Joe Biden or Donald Trump say?" It's going to be a little bit believable because of the characters involved. You know what I mean? Because these two could say anything at any point. Guess what? Grows the economy.
Well, the good thing is that they're both lizards.
Yeah, that's another one.
So
right?
we do have that.
So okay, let me hop in though. This is my favorite conspiracy theory, and it is because it's not because it's like funny or like that's such total bullshit. Like a lot of like lizard people running the government. The JFK assassination is just weird. The whole magic bullet.
Yeah. Yep.
And there were two shots fired, and the angle, and it would appear as though the bullet curved, which doesn't make sense. And
back and to the left.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then you have, it doesn't help that Lee Harvey Oswald is murdered 2 days later, surrounded by police, by somebody who has ties to the mafia. And there's all these different, was it a Cuban thing or whatever, but there's just shit about that doesn't make sense. And at some point, all that's going to be, I'll tell you what, like probably, I think what it will be when all the people from that generation are like, I hate to put this, I hate to be crass, but when all the people from that generation are dead, all that stuff will get declassified and we'll find out what actually happened.
Yeah.
There had to be another shooter. It doesn't make sense.
Well, no, it doesn't. It's actually, to me, this is one where it's like, it's a conspiracy theory, but it's also like something did actually happen.
Right.
And so this is what got me into conspiracy theories. This is back like when Bill Simmons had like his first the BS report,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and Chuck Klosterman was one of his like main guests back then,
Right.
and so still appears here and there. But that's what they would talk about was conspiracy theories. And I remember there was an episode. I think they went 2 hours just on JFK. And talking about like all the things out there, and it got me into it. I mean, and this eventually, I don't want us to jump too far because I like this topic. This eventually leads me to what like my topic is tonight. But there is this idea of, what is true? Like, why is it covered up too? Like, why cover this up for this and trying to do all these maneuvering things where like this actually happened? Like someone actually did get killed. It's not that, we're talking about the earth being flat, and just you saying the earth is flat is just dumb. You just sound dumb. It doesn't mean anything. Yeah, it doesn't mean anything. Or, thinking that the chemtrails, well, then why aren't we all just sick all the, those things. But you don't want to get too much. Yeah, you don't want to get too much reasoning in. Yeah, exactly. I feel like the chemtrails one I need to get back on because we have a lot of SpaceX stuff around here, very close to where I live. Yeah. And I feel like I need to bring that back up. I might do that this summer. That might be part of my little hijinks this summer is just sit outside and just like talk about that. I may bring that back. And then also, I just love the moon landing. I just love making that a whole thing where it's like, the flag's waving in the background and stuff like, I love that. So for me, I love poking fun of it. I know this is serious to some people, and I have the chart behind me, and like, I think that's like QAnon is like the number one thing. So
I like the anti-Semitic point of no return. You might want to just in case you're about to be interviewed for jobs, you might want to clarify what the hell is going on behind you there.
Yeah. This is a conspiracy. This is a conspiracy theory chart of like, this has nothing. This is just like what people think, and it's the broad horizon, and then it's very narrowed down to like stuff that is still very conspiracy theory, but not so many people believe it, and very niche. So.
Right.
Just trying to narrow that down.
Shout out Bob Lazar. That's another one of my favorite conspiracy theories lately that the government's trying to silence him. And like, if you watch that documentary, it's wild. Like some of the stuff. Did you watch that one? Did you?
I did. Yes.
Bob Lazar and
no.
You got to.
You told me about it.
I gotta watch this.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So it's this guy that worked at he was the scientist that worked at not Area 51, it was called like S4 or something like that. And he was working, he's like, I was working on alien spacecrafts. And he presented a lot of evidence that was really difficult to turn a blind eye at. And like one of the things was, wow, we assumed that this thing was part of the fuel system for this craft, whatever, and it was this element that was, we tested it, blah blah blah, we tested it, and it was not found on planet Earth. And then like 5, 10, 15 years later, it was this exact element was a man-made element on the periodic table. I forget which one it was. It's like, that's kind of weird. I don't like that. That makes me feel uncomfortable. And just some of the other stuff, and that the government's very, very clearly trying to silence him is also interesting. The documentary is called like Area 51 Flying Saucers, something else. But it's really interesting.
I'll have to check this out. Yeah, it does sound interesting.
So shout out to Bob Lazar. And Greg, did I send you that reel about the kid in Shutter Island?
Yes.
Oh my God. That was, bro. That one made me uncomfortable.
I'll send it to you, Matt.
Whenever he's talking about like taking the kids to the trampoline park, I was like, man, we used to take those kids outside and play Frisbee a lot. And I would play with them.
Yeah.
I'll laugh away. But anyway, I digress.
No, I mean, so when you sent me this, and I had already had mine in mind. I was like, I'm just going to keep it because I feel like, I mean, we can actually continue on with this and then lead it into what my topic is. And my topic is going down a rabbit hole or a wormhole, depending on how you say it. It doesn't really matter. It's getting lost on the internet where I went to go to bed at this time, and then I found something, and now 3 hours have passed, and this is now my job. This is my job to figure out everything about whatever topic it is. This wasn't something I thought about a lot until honestly the past like 12 years. And now it's something that I didn't do it before.
It's like a third of your life, though.
Yeah, but it wasn't something I did, honestly, until I started working, like consistently working. I guess now it's like a little bit longer, but it was at the very end of my journalism career in Pennsylvania that I started doing this because I'll be honest, it was just that basically it was fill in the blanks with writing articles. So a lot of my writing was just like writing and then reading things until the end of the night until I actually had to like go to press. And so I would just find something and just dig into it. So one of my favorites before we jump in, and I found this is more recent because of the USC scandal of getting every kid in, you know, all these rich people's kids into USC. I love looking at acceptance rates for colleges. It is something that I have lost many an hour looking at acceptance rates, and it's acceptance rates and then realizing like how many people apply and factoring, doing way too much math. And not that any of this matters because at the end of the day, it's, you know, who you know or what ends up happening in your life is how you get good jobs. And that's really the thing. But I love acceptance rates. I spent a good hour and 20 minutes yesterday just looking at acceptance rates for these completely random colleges. Because what I like to do, I'll find something, a topic, and let's just say it's SEC football. And I'm like, what's the acceptance rate to go to Alabama? What's the acceptance rate to go to Ole Miss? Ole Miss is around, I think, 83%. So basically you apply, you get in, that kind of thing. Point Park, our school, our alma mater, 80%, but it's a small school and not that many people apply. So they have to hold a certain thing. Clarion, about 80% as well, Brenton.
So I'm surprised it was
a small school.
Low.
Well, it's a small school,
wasn't higher.
And they have, and they have to fill that certain thing. So it's just like not that many people apply. The lowest is that I found is Caltech. It is at 3.9%.
Holy!
And these are just numbers now that I know. These are just numbers now that I have in my brain. Harvard's at 4%. None of this is useful. None of this matters to me. I'm 38 years old. I am doing grad school to a school that I just got into because I'm at a Catholic school. So none of these matter. I love it. I don't care. I love having these things in my brain. Matt, number one, do you call it a rabbit hole or a wormhole?
I call it a rabbit hole is what I call it.
You do call it a rabbit hole?
I do.
Okay.
I call it a rabbit hole. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also this is a very weird thing for me. Worms gross me out, so I always just call it rabbit hole. So I have to think about worms at all. It's just my little background about me. They gross me out. So when I have to think about something, I'm like, oh, let's just call it a rabbit hole and keep it to that.
Sure.
But so my thing is to relate a little bit to, you said you love SEC football. My thing that I love to go to about rabbit holes is, as Bomani Jones sometimes says when you're watching an NBA game, is he's still in the league. I love to look up, and I spend nights doing this, where I think of a player in Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, and I'm like, where did they end up? And it's someone that you thought about from 3 seasons ago, and then you find out, oh, they did like a stint in Chicago, and then they went to the minors. What? And then I'm looking up, like, if you've been to, or I started looking up things like this. I really went down a rabbit hole about this recently. So the XFL came back, and then it got me onto, I was like, what happened to the European Football League that they tried to start in like the late 90s, if you remember that?
Yes.
There was like the Barcelona Dragons, or teams like that, and I was like, I gotta look. And then I went down looking up players there, if any of them made it back to the league, how long it lasted, stuff like that. That's the stuff I really fall down into, is anything to, I mean, I remember being in college and they're like, don't use Wikipedia for anything. It's like the scary thing. Don't use it. It's fake. Wikipedia is the best. It sources everything. Right, it has links to interviews. I find everything. I just spend hours on there finding out what happened. to an old shortstop from the Pirates who I'm like, oh, went to Colorado and then they sprung out to the AAA for the next like 5 years. I have to follow their career to see what happened. That always interests me.
I love, and before, real quick, Brendan, I love just finding somebody that's playing basketball in like the second league in Europe, like a German, not the A League. They're playing in the B League in Germany.
Syria B or whatever.
Yeah, Serie B in Germany. You're like, man, that guy dominated in college, and he's Serie B in Germany. Brenton, I bet you have some good ones. I feel, Matt, you blew me away. Going European League for football, that's a homer.
First of all, I'm going to give you a stat on the European League. Hang on. Yep. From the Frankfurt Galaxy to the Super Bowl.
Oh, hell yeah.
Jake Delhomme.
Wow.
2 years.
Wow.
He played for the Amsterdam Admirals and the Frankfurt Galaxy. And then he was on the Saints practice squad. And then somehow was a starting quarterback in the Super Bowl. And had a year where he threw like 35 touchdowns. Anyway.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
A mini worm/rabbit hole.
Well, I mean, then you can get into the whole, if you really want to, and again, this is, I guess, the theme of the topic, but then you have Rod Smart, aka He Hate Me.
Yes.
I believe the only person that played in the XFL to make a Pro Bowl. And
I think you'd be right, because Tommy Mack didn't make the Pro Bowl, but did.
Yeah, he didn't make the Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
Won the championship and then, played for the Steelers, but never went to a Pro Bowl, though. Yeah.
He Hate Me was a Pro Bowl kick returner one season. And Jake Delhomme named one of his horses on his horse farm after the horse was named He Hate Me. So there you have that.
Incredible.
That's a fun. I didn't even have to look any of that up on the internet. I just knew that from old Panthers radio broadcasts. I'll be honest with you, like, I get interested in things and I want to learn things, and so I just kind of fall down. A lot of it's like historical stuff because that's what one of my hobbies.
Sure.
But I'll tell you what, this is a YouTube one, and I saw a really funny meme about this exact situation the other day, and I spent one day like a solid probably 6 hours watching like Indonesian guys making mud mansions in the middle of the jungle.
I remember this.
Yeah, it was a media recommendation like very early in the podcast. I can't remember what the hell they're called now, but it was like one day I was like, man, I could watch this for a while. And then I did, and they were like making like pools and water slides and split level, and it's all out of mud using natural tools. And I was like, hey kids, go make me some popcorn because I'm gonna be here I'm gonna be here for a bit. I like this. I like watching this. But like I think the biggest thing that I do is like I'll hop on IMDb and see like what has this person been in, or that sort of thing. I really enjoy that.
I love the IMDb one is a really good one. The other one for me is, and you know this probably as well as anyone, Brendan, is I love Baseball Reference.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Where you're headed there for a second.
Thank God Baseball Reference exists. I couldn't tell you the last day I wasn't on Baseball Reference. I check base. I will think of a player and I'll be like, I got to know what this guy did in 1995. Mm-hmm. And I just do it. And I don't know why. There's nothing. I was watching a Mets game earlier today and I thought of a couple players. Nobody would ever know them. And I was like, oh yeah, this guy. And then it's like nothing. He didn't do anything. This was not a good player. This was just someone that randomly appeared in the middle of the season. Yeah, like the Mike Maroth thing from the Tigers and has 21 losses, and it's like, that was weird. I mean, like I got the picture wrong. Verlander had 17 losses and led the league in losses 2 years later. But like, why would I know that some pitcher for the Tigers in 2003 had 20 losses at all? That's insane. But this is where my brain goes.
Do you know where I found that information?
Baseball Reference.
Yep, 100%.
It's literally the internet Bible for me. I can't. like I honestly, I thought about this after we had our discussion. I did actually think the last time I wasn't on Baseball Reference. I was on a boat from Alaska to Seattle, to not Seattle, but to Washington State, and we lost internet access. Just had no internet access, and I was in the middle of looking up like some stats to just for my own thing, and I lost it. And I remember saying to Janie, "I don't have Baseball Reference now." So the last day was about 4 years ago. So 4 years ago. So I at least check it once a day. I checked it earlier today. I was just confirming something with Ken Griffey Jr. earlier today. It's usually a Ken Griffey Jr. stat that I just have to look up. Or I like to just look up at like a Pirates roster from the late 90s.
Oh God.
That's another thing I like to do. Just to hurt myself.
Yeah,
but,
I was gonna say.
So the next thing I want to go with this, and before we wrap, because I love this. So and I wanted to tie this in, has a conspiracy theory ever led you down a rabbit/wormhole? Matt, any conspiracy theories that you've dug way too deep into?
Probably anything involving 9/11 probably had me. The jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams, like that probably was one. I think because we remember it, and especially because now, like in working at my previous job in a newsroom with like news interns that are now coming in and are like, I have no idea about any of this, and like you have to kind of teach them and talk to them about like what happened with this. You remember everything that happened, and I don't know why I sometimes like to watch like there was a really great, it might have been Nat Geo did it, but they did a documentary about it, like everything that happened the 3 days before, like the Mets Yankees game before and stuff like that, and all that interests me, and that side just like day to day what was happening. But just diving down all the information about from people who are like, no, you don't understand, they planned this, they wanted to do this, the government did this to our own selves, they decided how these buildings were going to come down, how the planes were going to look, the acting that was going to happen, how it was all set up for press conferences, like all of that is like, because it's all too well coordinated, and by this point somebody would have been paid off to be like, no, okay, I have the true story, and we wouldn't know about it. But no way, getting anyone to do anything like I mean, I can see in the background you have about Antifa did Jan 6, to get that many people to rally to fake something, to do something, like it's difficult to get anyone to even listen to you, to be like, we're gonna fake something and get something together. Like you gotta pay people, you gotta have rehearsals, like this has to work out. Like the idea that our government financed all of this to be this big, these buildings were going to come down and we're going to plan it ourselves to get us in this war, is like really what fascinates me, that people fall down into that conspiracy and that they truly believe all of it.
Yeah, the 9/11 stuff is always absolutely fast. I fell down so many of those. I had to stop. I mean, with 9/11, I had to stop at one point where it's so bonkers, but it is, I mean, it makes me laugh and it makes me cry. Brenton, any conspiracy theories that really just got you lost?
I would say the closest thing, and I don't know, when I was looking things up to see like what are some popular conspiracy theories outside of the ones that I had kind of written down, was the whole Yellowstone supervolcano, and that people, like there are people who think it can erupt any day, that sort of deal. That's what the conspiracy is, because there is an active volcano underneath Yellowstone that's 44 miles wide or whatever. But I got lost. I came across that because of trying to figure out what the cataclysmic event in the novel The Road was, because they never specifically say what it is. Cormac McCarthy never specifically like identifies what it was. There are vague details. And then there's like, that's like a whole conspiracy theory online of like what happened in this book, and trying to figure out why the characters are in the situation that they're in. And that kind of led me to, because it's always like when you go down a rabbit hole, it's really, I think, like my interpretation of going down a rabbit hole is you start at A, and A is like, why is the grass green? And then you end up at Z, and Z is like, why did the Japanese empire fall? Like that sort of thing. Like it's just plot point to plot point sort of thing. And that's what one of the ones that I spent a long time looking at was, and then just like researching the whole Yellowstone super volcano, because as a lot of people will know, I am mildly obsessed with potential cataclysmic events and the odds of them happening and giving me
Yes.
my sweet release. So that was one of my new favorite ones. It's a joke, people. Calm down.
He knows
comedy.
it won't be a sweet release.
Right. It'll be sour. It's dark humor, okay? Chill out.
I'm all
But that's
in on
where
this,
I was
Brendan.
at.
I have
Was
a new
like,
one.
you have what?
Oh, I'm all in on this super volcano. I got
It's
3
so cool.
pages lit up right now. I'm ready.
Yeah, no, it's dope. Like if it erupts, it's just curtains. It's like I forget what they said. If it erupts, it's like it would be the destructive power of like 10 nuclear warheads or something like that. Yeah, that's, fun stuff.
Shouldn't
like
happen
that.
in the next few thousand years.
Shouldn't.
But
you never know. Fingers
We'll
crossed.
see. Could speed up.
Fingers crossed.
I think for me, it's JFK Jr. still being around. I love that. I've dug a little too deep into that because I love the idea of it. And the biggest thing for me on this one is Instagram and watching the videos of people who thoroughly believe it. I normally don't use Instagram for my deep dives, but I got lost. It started with the Good Liars, and then it just progressed with other tags until I was in this thing where I never obviously believe it, but there's a point where you get to like people that not only think that he's alive, but that he could possibly be like Donald Trump, could be Donald Trump.
What?
Like there's things like that in makeup, and like it's a whole idea like Donald Trump died and JFK Jr. is Donald Trump, and it's just a lot of makeup. And that's why that's why Donald Trump looks so crazy looking, is because obviously the makeup's not that great, and it's just all these things.
It's just
like,
shitty CGI.
and that's why like his health is and that's why his health, it like comes back as good because like JFK Jr.'s in shape and underneath all these things, and like it's just it's great. I mean,
Wait,
it's great
hold on,
stuff.
time out. Weren't the Kennedys Democrats though?
Yes, and that's what makes it even better.
Wouldn't RFK be like the final boss of QAnon?
Yeah, like this is the thing where like they are like, no, he would have switched sides. He wouldn't have, like, he would have been anti this. It's like, no, like all this is just, I suggest you do it, but also I lost like 3 hours of my life, like about 4 or 5 months ago doing it during Christmas break. That's my thing. I forget time exists with these, especially if I have like a good day to not do anything. And I lost like 4 hours of my day. I had no idea. And then like I just get through it, and I was just like, wow, they think that JFK Jr. is alive in a Donald Trump suit, and he's this person.
I want to
This
pitch
is
you
where
on.
we're at.
I want to pitch you on a video game real quick that I just made up in my head.
It just gets okay. A conspiracy video game.
No, you play as. Do you remember from the January 6th riots the Q Shaman?
Yes, of
So you
course.
play as him, in each level, like the end of it, you fight like the main, like the Goombas are just like,
yes,
like they're like woke picketers or something, like woke marchers. And then at the end you have to fight one of the like Hunter Biden or something. And then the final boss is RFK. He just has like a robe and a hood on like Palpatine. He just throws him off. I've been around the whole time.
As long as I get Ted Kennedy like driving off into the water at some point, as long as I get that, that's what I need. But right. I mean, I'm a noted not Kennedy fan in general, but I love all the stuff about the entire family. I do. I mean, it's just it's Camelot, but it's also just a bunch of bullshit, and that's where I like to get lost, is in Kennedy things. So before we completely wrap up, Matt, thank you for joining us. This was awesome. You brought levity to our show last week.
Last week was heavy.
Last week I had to sit in the tub with a razor blade afterwards, contemplating everything. And this week I feel a lot better. If you're on the verge, everyone, of something, don't listen to episode 2 until you come out of it. Or if you're fully committed, do, but make sure you liked and subscribed before you do. We want that.
Well, I'm glad to bring up the mood a little bit on our side. I mean, I don't. The topics that we talked about were a little heavy, but
yeah, last week was heavy. The levity this week, I felt really good. I can't wait to get lost in a couple things now. This volcano thing, like I said, I got 4 tabs open on the super volcano. I'm down about that. I think I might go back to the Paul McCartney thing a little bit more, just for fun. No, I'm good. So, Matt, any final thoughts about any of the 3 subjects or anything? Just what's going on with you?
So, final thoughts to just go back to JFK Jr. Didn't Trump have a rally in Texas where he said JFK Jr. was going to be there? Wasn't there something like that where he was like, JFK Jr. is going to show up, and that obviously did not happen, but wasn't there something tied to that? Unless he was there as Trump. Inside. I mean, he was technically there. I just remember there was something about a promotion for that, and they were like, oh, there will be JFK Jr. there, which Trump was always doing the kind of whole, like, if you go through New York City and they pass you a flyer about like a comedy club, and like, you don't know who will show up, like Chris Rock will be there, Jerry Seinfeld, and it was like, all of his rallies were like, Ben Roethlisberger, Tom Brady, everyone's going to be there. You don't know who will show up. None of these people showed up. But I could have swore there was one where he was like, oh, JFK Jr. is going to be there. I'm going to show you he's still alive. And that was part of his selling point for people to come out and hear him talk.
Amazing.
You never know.
It's very true.
Who's going to be there? I don't know. It could be you. It could be me.
It could be JFK
They're very nice people. Both people on both sides. Very nice people.
That might have been the thing that actually led me down that huge wormhole, is when Trump said that, actually, going back. I had to, maybe I'll just get lost down
Was that the one at Waco?
I think so. Yeah. And I think that was, and that was my connection to like Greg talking about like, oh, people think Trump is JFK Jr. And I'm like, that's interesting because there was supposed to be this rally where Trump was going to be like, see, he's still alive, and here he is, and we're going to bring him out on stage, which did not happen. So.
What a place to hold a rally for America at the site of a seditious militia.
And Baylor football, which has its own problems. Could you imagine, though, he's up on stage, and then he just starts peeling it off? Imagine.
Yeah, like the cockroach guy in Men in Black. Sugar water.
God,
I need sugar
why
water.
didn't it happen? Why didn't it happen? If not, then that's how I know it's not true. That's how other than the plane crash or the plane crashing and no one ever finding the remains, of course, because it completely disintegrated in the air.
He's got to wait till that Monday in November where he says, "Now, before you vote, you should also know that you could be voting for," and then he's going to pull off and be JFK Jr. And he's like, "Before you vote." When he thinks when they're like, hey, it's not looking good, like polls say this, he's going to be like, okay, well, my one last trick is I'm going to tell everyone you're not actually voting for me, write in JFK Jr., and that's also a win for me.
The prosthetics are coming off. Breton, any final thoughts?
Fake news. Oh, wait, hold on. Yeah, actually, I do have a thought.
I
haven't done it yet. I may do it. If this doesn't work out, probably I will do
it. It's probably I will is truly the key. Well, once again, Matt, my muscles in my face are hurting from smiling, mostly because I'm not used to it anymore. That's not true. But thank you for coming on. You will be at the wedding. So
I will be there. Yeah, anyone could be in the building. Maybe Matt. Anyone. I don't know.
Maybe JFK Jr.
Maybe
JFK Jr. He has not confirmed nor denied. I don't know. Could be. Didn't say. So we don't know. The 3 of us will all be there. Maybe we should bring up conspiracy theory while we're there. Pass it along. See how many people we can trick into it. That sounds like fun. But Matt, thank you for coming on. It's a real pleasure. It's always good seeing you, my friend. We had a great pizza review back in the day in Washington, D.C.
We did.
That
We
was
did
fun.
your DC pizza review. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Big fan of the pod. So always glad to be a guest on it.
I love it. We'll have you back again. The Annals is a pod is a BXG production where I feel like we could have multiple guests all the time because everyone has something to talk about, even if it's JFK Jr. coming back. Breton, thank you for being my co-host tonight, coming up with conspiracy theories, which I love. Like I said, just to rehash, check us out on BXG Productions on all your fun socials. We got
and you're not fun
Nexus.
socials like Twitter.
And you're not fun socials. We have the Nexus. We have this fine program. We have my brain just stopped. The YouTube.
Don't buy any unripe bananas yet, because you won't live to eat them. Yeah.
We have the YouTubes, the Instagrams. Check all that out. More videos coming soon. We really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys did too. This is a BXG production. Brenton had his finger up.
I have a final conspiracy theory.
Oh, okay.
It's just, it's not a conspiracy theory, but where do the coffee creamers keep coming from?
With Macho Man. Three rises to the top. I think he's like Spider-Man.
He'd throw them and then all of a sudden he'd have another one.
Yeah.
So he would be, I gotta get my Spider-Man. So would he have been the spectacular Spider-Man? Is it the spectacular one that has it in his veins? Like actually has it in him?
The Toby. Whatever.
No.
The Toby.
No, I'm talking like the comic book lore.
Oh, I don't know.
There's a comic book where it actually comes out of him too. Anyhow, that's Macho Man where he just squeezes his fingers together and it just pops up creamers.
Coffee creamer comes out.
Yeah. So amazing. That is great. Check that out if you haven't. Just look up. You know what? That's a great rabbit hole wormhole. Just look up Macho Man Randy Savage and see yourself 3 hours later.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's a great one. So Matt, thank you. Breton, thank you. Greg, you're welcome. This has been the Annals of Our Lore. AOL. Hashtag AOL. No one's used it before. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We really appreciate it. Have a fine night, everybody.